I'm one of the greatest reality competition players of all time. Quantitatively, I'm better than everyone here. In these shows is you are aggressive and you play hard. I wanted nothing more than to come out here and be a traitor because I don't care about any of you.
This season of The Traitors is becoming hard to watch. It's becoming a very hard watch because at the end of the day, why are they so disorganized? How are they turning on one another when they could have easily won this? They could have easily won this because nobody would have assumed that they're connected in any way, especially after Bob the drag queen left. So the audacity to have people sort of write down, like Danielle to write down Boston Rob doesn't make sense. For Caroline to out, Danielle doesn't make any sense. And I don't get why the faithfuls cannot pick up on this. I don't get it. And Derek deserves to die. He does deserve to be killed by the traitors because at the end of the day, he came for the boss without being fully prepared. What could have happened is Boston Rob could have played this game with Derek and Wes, and he could have played this game with the traitors, and they could have all got to the final. But greed, and wanting to be the most popular is the reason why they are where they are. Anyway, hey there, thanks for stopping by. It's your girl Valerie. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, click the like button, turn on the notification bell for when I upload new videos, and definitely leave a comment. In this episode, I'll be reviewing The Traitors, Season 3, Episode 6. So in the talk, tensions are high because Caroline has just found out that, Danielle has been mentioning her name. And it's like, Danielle, why would you do that? Danielle is sort of doing amateur moves. And I think at some point they will work for her, but she's still going to be banished. She's still going to be banished because her game is so weak. And I don't get how she can continue on this game. So Caroline calls them out and Bob tries to calm the waters. And they sort of are debating who to kill. So it's between Bob H. And then there's Wes, because obviously he mentioned Boston Rob's name, and then they're undecided. They're sort of debating whether to go Derek, but for a fact that Danielle would never murder Derek. So anyway, they finally agree on a name. They leave the talk, and in the morning, everyone comes down for breakfast. You have Dolores sort of panicking that she hopes Danielle is not killed because at the end of the day, Danielle gave her the shield, so she would feel very guilty if Danielle was killed. And it's like, I would not feel guilty. I would question if Danielle was not killed, that why was she not killed? That would be my question. Because she had the opportunity to save herself and didn't save herself, which tells me that she's a traitor. You have Derek already starting theories of, we've been discussing about Boston Rob. And it's like, Derek, keep quiet. Keep quiet. You are just jealous that Boston Rob has a better gameplay than you have, and so the idea or the audacity to start throwing Boston Rob's name out there, if Boston Rob comes, then I'll know that he is a traitor. And it's like, please keep quiet. Anyway, Boston Rob comes, and then the final 3 people come in, and it's revealed that Bob H was killed. Am I surprised? No. I think he needed to go home. I think he actually volunteered to go home on medical reasons, and that's why they killed him. And this is why he was asked to sort of mention Bob's name, because he didn't do well at the challenge where they were having to carry the bodies and the heads up the hill. So I think for medical reasons, he opted out, but they didn't want to use him as a failure. And so they made them kill him because it would have made more sense to kill Wes than it made sense to kill Bob H. Anyway, Alan Cumming comes and he sort of reveals that, Bob Harper has been killed. And so it's time to keep it stepping and on to the next challenge. I don't know. I'm sort of side-eyeing people. Danielle, the way she sits in confessionals and pretends to cry, I didn't want to kill so-and-so. She's always looking out for herself for after the show, I think, or for when she has to explain to everyone. I don't think she's that bold as she makes out. Anyway, you have Dolores reveal to Caroline that, Danielle has told her that Caroline might be a traitor. And it's like, seriously, Danielle needs to go home. She's getting on my last nerve. She needs to go home. And I don't know what it will take for them to vote her out, but somebody needs to vote her out because she's getting on my last nerve. Her gameplay is so weak and she's busy outing other traitors for reasons best known to her. So everyone gets ready. They get in the SUVs and off they go to their next challenge. And the challenge is, there's a big statue of a traitor and they're supposed to collect gunpowder enough to sort of blow up the statue. But also there's 3 shields and the gunpowder is on 3 different colored lots. So they have to sort of divide themselves, and then some will go to green, some will go to red, some will go to yellow, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And so everybody decides to go for the shield. There's only one shield. So they have 30 minutes. They run to the shield. And now the problem is who will get the shield. So with the first troop, you had Tom sort of come up with the combination and the response. And then Caroline just dived in and she got the shield. And when she got the shield, obviously Danielle was there. And you have, the other person, Derek, I think it was, saying, oh, but I wanted the shield. How did you end up getting the shield? I was inputting the number. And so somehow Danielle makes it to a point whereby Caroline gets the shield. So Caroline gets one shield. You have Dylan get the other shield. And then you have Crucial have the final shield, if I'm not mistaken, which means there's 3 people with shields that are protected. And it's agreed upon that whoever has a shield should not tell the traitors that we've got the shield, because we don't want them to know who's immune and who's not immune. And it's like 2 of your groups, there's a traitor in it. So they are going to know who has the shield and who doesn't, and they are going to know who to kill. Anyway, in the trucks back, everyone is sort of nervous and sort of throwing around names about who they want to kill. And then suddenly Derek starts on his high horse of saying, I want to come after Boston Rob. And it's like everybody wants to be the one that toppled the master. Everybody wants to be the one that toppled the master. And it doesn't make sense to me that why are we going after Boston Rob when there are other people that we could have been killing or we could be nominating. Boston Rob for me is the show. And I think him going home means that he's going home because he wants to. Anyway, they get back to the castle and people are throwing names. Caroline is in her feelings because she's found out that Danielle was sort of throwing out her name. So she is very upset with Danielle, but doesn't pull Danielle aside. She just starts sort of telling people. She tells Dolores and somebody else that, oh, look, Danielle is throwing my name out. I heard she's throwing my name out. And it's like, this is amateur move, in my opinion. The traitors have displayed what is called amateur move. And sadly, Alan chose the wrong group because this was such a motley crew of people that no one would have suspected that they are working together. But egos got too bruised and egos got stepped on, and people decided to just go awry and self-destruct because they could have easily waited for the end. They could have played their game. Nobody would have seen them as threats because maybe Boston Rob, but everybody else would not have been seen as a threat because nobody would believe that they would be able to play together, because at the moment no one was suspecting Caroline until Danielle threw Caroline's name out there. And it doesn't make sense to me that no one is saying that every time somebody mentions a traitor, they're being killed. And it's like, is this sort of programmed as to who is going home and when are they going home? It doesn't make sense. So you eventually have Wes and Derek running around trying to throw around, Boston Rob's name, because they've agreed that if we can sort of blow him out of the water, then that takes the heat away from us. And it's like, well, yes, if he's a traitor, it takes the heat, but that doesn't mean that people might not suspect that maybe there's 2 traitors amongst the new guys. Have you ever thought about that? Maybe people might think one of you was recruited by Boston Rob. If he is the traitor, it doesn't make sense. So everybody's very nervous. Tom, sadly, has brought up Dolores' name, so she feels some type of way. So you have Crucial go and confront Derek. Derek, I heard that you're going after Boston Rob. And he's sort of and eyeing, and it's like, well, if you're going to say somebody's name, then have the cojones to stand on it. Have the cojones to stand on your decision. If you're throwing Boston Rob's name out there, then be man enough to sort of say it. Don't hide, amongst everybody else and just hope that everything will be okay. It doesn't make sense. They gather around the round table and Alan opens the floor up. So Dolores immediately brings up the fact that she's heard that Tom is throwing her name out. And she's sort of saying that, Bob, the drag queen, told us there's something called a bad faithful. And Tom, you're coming across as that. And it's like, please don't. Please. Tom is just confused. He's just wanting to mention a name so that he can be sort of seen as part of the team and part of the contributing people. The roundtable was a dumpster fire. It really was a dumpster fire because the moment Derek decided to go for Boston Rob was the moment he sort of signed his papers to go home. He bought his ticket out of Scotland because Boston Rob knows what he's saying, and he's a better game player than either him and Wes combined. And he just showed it. Because you had Derek go after Boston Rob, and then Boston Rob flipped it and turned it on Wes. Because he couldn't turn it back on Derek, because then people would say you're just slinging mud at each other. But he turned it on Wes. And Wes is used to playing a pompous game. He's used to sort of being very braggadocious on the challenge. And sadly, this didn't work out for him. The audacity to say to people, if you come for me, I'll come for you, didn't work out. It really didn't work out. And he was the only person from the challenge. And so the idea that he didn't think his game was better suited playing with Boston Rob doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense. He could have lashed himself onto Survivor and rode it to the end of Survivor and left Big Brother, but he didn't. And Caroline is very emotional and very erratic. And I think this is why she was chosen to be a traitor, because they knew that nobody would suspect her. And they wanted to see how she'd play that game. And she was doing very well up until she found out about Danielle. And Danielle, I don't even know what Danielle was thinking, going around throwing out Caroline's name, because at the end of the day, they're all traitors. They need to work with one another. The audacity to sort of call each other out in front of other people doesn't make sense. Even Boston Rob was shocked. He was shocked that you had Caroline sort of calling out Danielle, and then Danielle, after she was called out, instead of owning up to her mess, she then decided to call out Caroline and just like, make it make sense. How are the two of you being so toxic and so all over the place? Make it make sense. And because Boston Rob looked at Dylan and sort of eyed him out and sort of said to him, I think as I had your back, you have to have mine. Boston Rob ended up, being safe, and Wes went home. He went home, which is really sad, but at the end of the day, he was his own worst enemy, because I think he thought, if nothing else, I'll go out on a high, because he called himself the biggest game player, the best that ever walked the surface of the earth. And it's like, this is Wes at his finest. This is Wes at his finest. And so to have Brittany and Derek turning on each other doesn't make sense. Derek, I think, is now knows that he's in the crosshairs of Boston Rob, and he knows that his days are numbered, because he came after Boston Rob without all the relevant information, and now it's flipped on him. For him to try and sort of have a back and forth with Brittany after the round table doesn't make sense. For him to try and sort of convert Dylan into his team doesn't make sense. I don't think Dylan will come after Boston Rob. I think if he does, it will be with Rob's blessing. I think Rob will be fed up and he wants to go home, and so he'll give him the go-ahead to say, okay, fine, call me out. Otherwise, I don't get how, he would give up on Boston Rob when he was fanboying, when he first saw Boston Rob come in. I don't know. I can't wait to see what happens in episode 7. Thanks, guys, for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And click the link in my video to watch my review from episode 5. Bye, guys.